Ambient sounds of a cheering crowd. Soft spotlight on a man standing behind a mic. His face calm, but focused. My name is Ethan Wade. I'm 33 years old. I live in Brooklyn, New York. And I host one of the fastest growing podcasts in the country. But 2 years ago, I was nothing. Just a quiet guy with too many thoughts, and nobody who wanted to hear them. Especially not her. The first time Rachel called me boring, we were sitting at a tiny cafe in Williamsburg. I was telling her about a podcast idea I had, something about untold stories from people who live quiet lives. Postal workers, immigrants, night janitors, the people no one listens to. She didn't even look up from her phone. She smirked, then said, "That sounds like something only you would find interesting." I remember exactly how it felt. Like I'd been unplugged mid-sentence. Like my voice didn't matter. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst came later, when I realized she meant it. Not just about the podcast. About me. To her, I was background noise. And yet tonight, in this packed auditorium, I hear people cheering for the same stories she laughed at. Stories told in the same voice she once tuned out. It's funny how things change. But back then, nothing felt funny at all. Back then, I was just a quiet guy in love with a woman who never really listened. Rachel and I had been together almost 4 years. She worked in digital marketing, always buzzing with ideas, meetings, events. I worked in IT, mostly remote, mostly silent, mostly invisible. I thought the balance worked. I thought opposites attracted. Turns out, they only collide if one side keeps quiet for too long. We lived together in a small one-bedroom apartment. Her side of the closet had color-coded blazers and platform heels. Mine had 4 hoodies and a stack of notebooks I never let her read. She used to say I was charming in a quiet way. But over time, quiet turned into dull. Charming turned into predictable. And love turned into something colder than silence. I kept telling myself she was just stressed, busy, overworked. But deep down, I could feel it shifting, like a conversation slowly fading into static, like a story no one finishes. And the worst part? I never even got to tell mine. Not until now. She told me I was boring. Now she pays $29.99 a month to hear the same voice she once ignored. And this is how it all began. Back before everything fell apart, I genuinely believed I had a good life. Not perfect, but good. I had a steady job, a warm apartment, and a woman I thought I'd marry. My days were quiet, structured. I'd wake up early, make coffee, work from my desk near the window. Rachel would breeze in an hour later, hair still wet from the shower, phone already ringing, eyes bouncing from one screen to the next. She was energy in motion. I was stillness in a storm. And for a while, that balance made sense to me. I remember Sundays the most. They were the only days she didn't have calls, or meetings, or networking dinners. We'd walk to the bookstore down the block. I'd lose myself in memoirs and poetry while she flipped through fashion magazines or chatted with the cashier. Then we'd stop by a bakery and split a single croissant, like some tiny tradition that made life feel romantic in its simplicity. She called those our soft days. I held on to that phrase like it meant something sacred. But somewhere in the middle of our 3rd year together, the softness started hardening. She'd scroll through her phone while I talked, cut me off mid-sentence to answer texts. When I tried to share things I'd written, podcast episode ideas, short reflections, thoughts I thought were meaningful, she'd give a half nod and say, "That's nice, babe," without even reading them. And yet I didn't push. I told myself she was just tired. That maybe she didn't get my world, but she still loved me. That's what you do in love, right? You forgive the little disconnects. You look past the empty uh-huhs and keep pouring yourself into the silence, hoping one day it'll echo back. We had dinner with our friends one night, all loud, opinionated types. I liked them, but I never really fit in. That night, someone brought up trending podcasts. Crime, comedy, celebrity gossip. I casually said, "I've actually been thinking about starting one." Rachel didn't even let me finish. She laughed, not harsh, but loud enough that everyone heard. "Ethan wants to start a podcast," she said with that tone people use when toddlers say they want to be astronauts. Her friend smiled politely. I smiled too, trying to pretend it didn't sting. Later that night, I asked her about it. Asked if she really thought it was a dumb idea. She sighed, tossed her heels by the couch, and said, "It's not that it's dumb. It's just, you're not exactly Mr. Personality. People want hosts who can, command a room." I nodded. Said nothing. But deep down, something cracked. I started writing more after that. Not for her, but for myself. Late nights, when she'd fall asleep watching Netflix, I'd sit on the balcony and fill up my notebooks with quiet observations. I didn't know if they'd ever become episodes. I just knew I needed to get them out of my head. Still, I kept loving her. Kept hoping something would shift. Maybe if I supported her enough, showed up to her networking events, laughed at her jokes, brought her coffee when she was working late, maybe then she'd notice the way I'd been shrinking just to make her shine. There were moments when I convinced myself it was working. A random hug in the kitchen. Her falling asleep on my chest. A note she left once. "You're my calm in the chaos." But those moments became rare. Like artifacts from a time that was slowly vanishing. The real tipping point came one morning when I made her breakfast. Nothing fancy, just scrambled eggs, toast, and black coffee. I placed the plate in front of her while she was answering emails. She didn't even look up. 10 minutes later, she stood, grabbed her bag, and said, "Can you not do that every morning? It's sweet, but it kind of makes me feel like I'm dating a retired grandpa." She meant it as a joke. I forced a laugh. But inside, I felt something sink. Something heavy. It was the realization that I wasn't being seen, not truly. I wasn't a partner anymore. I was a prop. A placeholder for someone more dynamic. More exciting. More whatever she thought she deserved. But I didn't leave. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even argue. I stayed. Because part of me still believed that maybe, if I could just prove I wasn't boring, she'd come back to me. I didn't realize until much later. I was never the problem. Things didn't fall apart all at once. That's the dangerous part about slow endings. You don't realize you're in one until you're halfway through, and by then, it's too late to stop the slide. At first, it was small things. Her phone started living face down. Notifications went silent. She laughed more, but never when we were together. There were more. Last-minute client dinners. More weekends she suddenly needed to clear her head. Alone. And every time I asked if she was okay, she'd sigh and say, "God, Ethan. Can't I just have space without you making it a thing?" So I stopped asking. I learned to keep my questions quiet and my thoughts quieter. I smiled through cold silences. I cleaned the apartment before she came home. I played background jazz on the speakers like we used to, even though she didn't notice anymore. But inside, I started watching. It wasn't out of paranoia. It was instinct, the same way animals know a storm is coming long before it hits. You just feel the shift. She started guarding her phone like it was sacred, taking it with her even to the bathroom. One night, I heard her voice in the hallway, low and playful, almost whispering, and when I came out, she immediately ended the call. "Just my cousin," she said, a little too quickly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Another night, she got a text at 2:07 a.m. I saw the screen flash in the dark. I wasn't even trying to snoop. I just saw it light up, bright as a flare in the middle of our bedroom. The name said, "Ben Work," but the preview read, "Still thinking about last night. Couldn't stop smiling." She turned over quickly, pulled the blanket up, and slid her phone under the pillow like it was nothing. I pretended to be asleep. My heart was pounding. My fingers curled into fists under the sheets, but my face stayed calm. That night, I didn't say a word. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find, but because I already knew. After that, I started noticing everything. The way she started dressing different for meetings. The way her voice lifted an octave when she answered unknown numbers. How she started locking her laptop, something she'd never done before. One night, she forgot to close her Gmail. I walked past her laptop and saw a calendar invite titled, "Meet B at the Mercer 8 p.m. The same night she told me she was having a girls' night in. I stared at the screen for a full minute. I didn't take a screenshot. Didn't forward it. Didn't even move the mouse. I just looked, and remembered the last time she smiled that way around me. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was sad. Not because she was pulling away, but because she clearly thought I was too blind to notice. Too soft to confront her. Too boring to be a threat. So I played the part. I stayed quiet. I kissed her on the cheek before she left. I asked how her girls' night went and smiled when she said, "It was so needed, babe." I even offered to order Thai food for the two of us, like old times. She said no. Said she wasn't hungry. Said she was tired. Then she went to bed and scrolled through her phone under the covers, the glow lighting up her face like some secret flame I wasn't allowed to see. I lay awake next to her, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't even confused anymore. I was just done pretending. So I made a decision that night. I was going to stop trying to be enough for her and start becoming everything she said I couldn't be. Not to win her back. Not to make her jealous. But to prove something to myself. That I wasn't boring. That my voice mattered. That silence doesn't mean weakness. And that sometimes the best stories begin in the quietest rooms. It happened on a Thursday night. Nothing special about the day. The sky was gray, the city was loud, and I was home early after my shift ended unexpectedly. I walked into our apartment, expecting to find Rachel on the couch with her laptop and a glass of wine. Instead, it was quiet. Too quiet. I set my bag down and heard her laugh, but it wasn't coming from the living room. It was faint. Muffled. I followed the sound and realized it was coming from the bathroom. Door cracked. Bluetooth speaker playing music. Her voice echoing, soft, sweet, and intimate. "No, I swear, he doesn't even notice anything. He still thinks we're fine." Yeah, that's why I haven't told him yet. I mean, what would I even say? "Hey, I'm bored of your quiet little world and your half-baked podcast dreams." I froze. Every word landed like a punch to the gut. But I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. She kept laughing, this casual, condescending laugh and said, "Honestly, it's like dating a diary. He just feels everything and never does anything." Then the water shut off. I stepped back silently, walked to the kitchen, and opened the fridge just as she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. She smiled at me like nothing happened. "Hey, babe," she said. "You're home early." I smiled back. "Yeah," I replied. "Slow day." That night, I didn't sleep. I laid there next to her, listening to her breath, remembering every word she said when she thought I wasn't listening. That wasn't just betrayal, that was mockery, contempt, and worse, she thought I was too passive to ever fight back. That's what snapped inside me. Not the cheating, not the lies, not even the fake smiles and late-night texts. It was the certainty in her voice, the confidence that I was so small, so soft, so boring that I'd just take it, that I'd fade into the background like some quiet wallpaper while she moved on to louder things. But I wasn't wallpaper, and I wasn't going to fade. I didn't cry that night. I didn't yell, didn't confront her, didn't call out her lies. Instead, I got up, quietly, calmly, sat at my desk, pulled out one of the notebooks she never bothered to read, opened a blank Google document, and typed the words, "Episode 1, The Woman Who Forgot I Was Listening." No mic, no audience, no script, just my voice and the truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I created. That morning, I made her coffee like always. She took it with a distracted smile, barely glancing up from her phone. She didn't know I'd been awake the whole night. She didn't see the shift in my eyes, the change in my posture. The stillness wasn't submission anymore. It was precision. Over the next few days, I played the part. I complimented her hair. I asked about her meetings. I let her talk about her colleagues, the ones I now knew were something more. And in the silence, I was building something. Every night, while she slept, I stayed up, researching podcast platforms, learning about audio mastering, copyright, distribution. I ordered a mid-range mic off Amazon, paid for a month of Adobe Audition, and set up a recording booth in the hallway closet using pillows and 2 yoga mats. Crude, but functional. I didn't have a single follower. No name. No brand, but I had truth. And that was enough. I called the podcast The Quiet Voice. The first episode wasn't about Rachel directly, not in name. But it was her story. Or at least mine. I spoke slowly, honestly, about what it feels like to be dismissed. To love someone who laughs at your dreams. To have a voice that no one hears, until they do. I uploaded it, closed my laptop, and went to sleep. I didn't expect anything. But 3 days later, I checked the stats, 41 plays. Nothing massive. But not zero. That was all I needed. Episode 2 was about control, the invisible kind. The slow erosion of self-worth in relationships where one person smiles while the other drowns. That one hit 127 plays. Then 300. Then 1,100. It spread like smoke, slow, quiet, impossible to contain. On forums. On Reddit threads. On niche subreddits like r/deadbedrooms and r/emotional neglect. People started emailing me. Strangers. They didn't just listen, they related. Rachel didn't notice. She was too busy planning a work trip to Chicago that didn't show up on her calendar. I helped her pack. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You're so good to me." I smiled and replied, "I know." When she left, I opened my notebook and wrote the script for episode 5. How to tell you're being replaced, even if they never say it out loud. My voice was steady, calm, not angry. That's what made it powerful. I wasn't exposing her to the world. I was exposing a pattern. A quiet truth millions of people were silently enduring, and no one was talking about. And while she was out building fake marketing pitches with her Ben from work, I was building a brand. My first viral clip hit TikTok at 2:13 p.m. on a Tuesday. Just a 27-second clip, my voice saying, "Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're listening. And sometimes, the quietest ones see the most." It hit 80K views in 6 hours. Then 400K in a day. Rachel didn't even see it, but her friends did. One of them sent her the clip and said, "Wait, this guy sounds like Ethan." She laughed it off. "Yeah, right. Ethan hates TikTok." She didn't know I had spent the past month studying platform algorithms and audio editing tutorials like my life depended on it. She didn't know my third episode had just crossed 50,000 downloads. She didn't know Spotify had emailed me about joining their Rising Creator program. And she definitely didn't know that I had recorded everything. The night I heard her phone buzz at 2 a.m., I screen recorded the message. The girls' night she lied about? I had a photo of her reservation confirmation at the hotel, sent from her Gmail to our shared printer. The bathroom conversation? I had installed a security mic weeks ago, not because I didn't trust her, but because I stopped trusting myself to believe her. Every lie, every call, every quote, stored neatly in a cloud folder labeled, "When she asks why." Not to destroy her, not to expose her, but to protect my version of the truth. To remind myself that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't boring. I was becoming. The revenge wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting matches or dramatic confrontations. It came like everything else in my life, quietly and with precision. By the time Rachel started noticing something had changed, it was already too late. She came back from her work trip glowing, not even trying to hide it. Her voice was lighter, her texts quicker, her presence colder. That night, I watched her from across the dinner table as she scrolled through her phone, smiling at someone else's messages while pretending to be here with me. She didn't know she was eating dinner with a man who had already made peace with letting her go. Or that my voice, the one she called boring, had just reached 500,000 people this week. But I didn't need her to know. Not yet. I waited until the Spotify deal was finalized. Until my small apartment was suddenly being visited by real producers. Until I hit my first 10,000 paid subscribers on Patreon. People who didn't just listen, they paid to hear what I had to say. I upgraded the mic. I bought studio quality headphones. I moved the podcast setup out of the hallway closet and into the spare room she never entered. And then I recorded episode 10. The ones who don't know they're the villain. It wasn't about Rachel. Not by name. Not by any traceable detail. But it was about her. Every line, every word, every breath, pulled from real moments I had lived with her. A story about being dismissed. About the quiet partner who sees everything but says nothing, until he decides silence isn't survival anymore. I posted it on a Friday at midnight. By Sunday, it had 1.3 million downloads. It hit trending charts on Apple and Spotify. By Monday, her friends were sending her clips. "Rachel, isn't this kind of like you and Ethan? Wait, didn't you date a podcast guy?" And finally, the moment I had been building toward. She texted me, "Rachel, be honest. Is this podcast about me? I stared at the message. Typed. Deleted. Typed again. Then I sent one sentence. If the story fits, maybe you were meant to hear it. No emojis. No closure. Just truth, cold and clean. But I wasn't done. A month later, I was invited to speak at a podcast summit in Manhattan, my first live panel. Full theater, sold-out crowd, press passes, merch lines. On stage, I looked out at the sea of faces and saw her. Rachel. Front row. Sunglasses in her hair. Sitting alone. She had bought a VIP pass. I almost laughed. The woman who once said, "No one would listen to you talk for 5 minutes," had just paid $179 to do exactly that. I opened my talk with a story, the first one I ever recorded. The one about how I found my voice after being silenced for years by someone I loved. The crowd went still. She didn't move. I didn't mention her name. Didn't call her out. Didn't break my tone. But she knew. And so did I. I ended the talk with the same words I wrote the night she mocked my dream. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is building the life they told you you'd never have, and letting them watch. The applause thundered. But I wasn't looking at the audience. I was looking at her. And she couldn't even clap. After the show, she waited outside near the green room. I walked right past her. She opened her mouth, probably to say something rehearsed. An apology. A compliment. A rewrite of history. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. My silence said everything. That was my closure. Not a dramatic fight. Not a revenge post. Just success, delivered with a straight spine and a quiet smile. It's been 18 months since that night. Since the silence finally spoke. Since the man she called boring stood on a stage while she sat in the shadows, paying to hear the voice she once refused to listen to. People often ask me now, "Do you ever miss her?" And the truth is, I don't. Not because I hate her. Not because I want revenge all over again. But because I've outgrown the version of myself who needed her love to feel worthy. I live alone now. Peacefully. Deliberately. My apartment's smaller, but it's filled with sound. Not noise, not chaos, sound with purpose. My studio's in the corner by the window, where the light hits just right in the mornings. I record 3 times a week. Every word I say is mine. Every sentence crafted with intention. Every pause earned. I don't chase downloads. I don't chase clout. I just speak. And people listen. Not because I'm loud, or flashy, or charismatic. But because what I say means something. Sometimes, when I walk through the city, someone will recognize my voice before they recognize my face. They'll say, "You're the guy who talks about quiet things." And I always smile and say, "Yeah, I guess I am." Rachel reached out once more, this time with a long email. Pages of nostalgia, apology, regret. She said she didn't realize what she had. Said she admired who I'd become. Said she listens to every episode now because it helps her understand the kind of man she never appreciated. I didn't reply. Not because I'm bitter, but because I don't owe the past anything. I've already said everything I needed to say into a mic, across a signal, into the ears of people who actually wanted to hear it. She took my silence for weakness. But she forgot. Silence is where stories begin. And for mine, I built a life louder than anything she ever imagined. No billboards. No screaming. Just resonance. And if you ask me what I've learned, really learned, it's this. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to keep speaking, even when no one's listening. Because one day, the world catches up. And when it does, the ones who once mocked your voice will pay to hear it echo. Asterisk. Voice slows, deep tone. She told me I was boring, but I became unforgettable.